Imagine me telling you that there is a team that is 10-2, tied for the second best record in the league, has a top 10 defense, has a top 10 quarterback, and yet NFL fans refuse to acknowledge this team as a Super Bowl contender. When you hear people talk about all of the teams that could possibly win it all, Kansas City for the third straight time, the Bills, the Ravens, the Steelers, the Eagles, the Detroit Lions, the Packers, people tend to just ignore the Minnesota Vikings for some reason. And I really don't know why. A lot of people just act like the Vikings are just a fraud team, they're a fluke, and they're not to be taken seriously when it comes to the Super Bowl conversation. Sam Darnold is a legit quarterback this year. I get it. You know, when you have a guy who's been up and down, not really that good for the majority of his career, he comes out of nowhere and plays at this high of a level, you're reluctant to believe that he can sustain this level of play throughout the entirety of an NFL season. But at this point, we only have about a month left of football in the regular season. And Sam Darnold has 23 touchdowns to 10 interceptions and is completing 67.6% of his passes. So at this point, when you're this late into the season, what you are is who you are. It's not a fluke. After Thanksgiving is when the pretenders separate themselves from the contenders, and that's normally when you want your quarterback to play their best football. Sam Darnold was in a little bit of a slump near the middle portion of the season, but over his last 3 games, he's played himself out of that slump. He's thrown 6 touchdowns and no picks. I don't get why more people are not talking about the Minnesota Vikings in terms of them being a legit Super Bowl contender, because they got a great defense. Brian Flores has this defense playing some fantastic football. They are 5th in the league in points per game allowed. They got the best run defense in the NFL, and they're 2nd in turnovers per game forced. And offensively, with all the weapons that they have, Sam Darnold is good enough to lead the Vikings to a deep playoff run and possibly a Super Bowl appearance, because the majority of the NFL's best quarterbacks are in the AFC. Outside of Matthew Stafford and Jalen Hurts, there aren't really too many high-level quarterbacks in the NFC. Jordan Love is too inconsistent for me to put a lot of stock in him being an elite quarterback. He's a good quarterback. When he's playing his best football, he is an elite quarterback, but he's just so sporadic in my opinion. Jared Goff is good, but I don't think the gap between how well Jared Goff has played and how well Sam Darnold has played this year is that wide. And with that, there's a good path for Minnesota to not only make a deep playoff run, but also get into the Super Bowl. Because I like the Lions, but once you get into the playoffs, that's really when we're going to find out who you truly are. The Vikings are a well-coached team, and the last time they played the Detroit Lions, they only lost by 1 possession. And they got some really good wins against the Texans, the Green Bay Packers with Jordan Love, the Arizona Cardinals. This isn't one of those teams that is benefiting off having an easy schedule and beating up on weak teams. They got some pretty quality wins here and there. And yeah, they have had a few losses that made you kind of scratch your head. But overall, the Vikings, with how good they've been on both sides of the football, offensively and defensively, and the consistent quarterback play that they've been getting out of Sam Darnold, they need to be accepted more as a Super Bowl contender. You guys have to stop refusing to acknowledge how good the Vikings are. You don't get to 10-2 tied for the second best record in the league if you're not a good team. We've seen teams falling off before, but the Vikings are too well coached for that to happen. Brian Flores is most likely going to end up being a head coach eventually, whether it be next year or the year after. He's going to get another opportunity sooner rather than later. He's the best defensive coordinator in the league at the moment. I just don't understand why we just keep refusing to acknowledge how good the Minnesota Vikings are. They deserve to be in that Super Bowl conversation. They got as many weapons on offense as what the Detroit Lions, the Philadelphia Eagles, and the Green Bay Packers do. Jordan Addison, TJ Hawkinson, Jay Jetta is arguably the best receiver in the league. Aaron Jones has played some pretty good football in spite of the injury issues. A good offensive line. You feel me? Why is it that we are just reluctant to accept how good this team is when in the NFC in the past, the Vikings went to the conference championship game with Case Keenum at quarterback. Nick Foles led the Philadelphia Eagles to a Super Bowl win over the Patriots and Tom freaking Brady. This is a conference that hasn't really been known for high-level quarterback play. So therefore, even if you don't view the Vikings as a Super Bowl contender because you don't believe in Sam Darnold, the team around him overall is good enough to help elevate him and to make a deep postseason run.